The back squat holds a special place in my heart. I have always favored squatting over deadlifting, and the back squat is also the exercise during which I busted my back and the exercise that helped me rebuild. You can learn more about that in my video on how neutral spine did me wrong. So today I take you through all things back squatting, from the rack setup to the breathing to the movement itself and possible modifications. Let's get it. I'm Annie Miller, and I help you learn as you train and enjoy your lifts again without having to figure it out for yourself. Today, we squat. The back squat is in the movement category of a lower body push exercise, and our prime movers are going to be the quads, the glutes, and the hamstrings. The back squat in particular can have a high neural load, meaning that it can tax your nervous system due to it being axially loaded, aka it loads the spine. And while your lower body is the prime mover, the exercise requires many other muscles of the body to be involved: your spinal erectors, your core muscles, your lats, etc. You can think of this as a high systemic load type of exercise. Before we actually look at the form of the squat, we need to set up the rack. So your J-hook height should be right at your armpit. You should not have to go up onto your tippy toes to unrack the bar. If it's at your armpit, you shouldn't have to do that. As far as loading the bar, you're gonna put the weight on and then add collars if you wish. You can use safety bars or not. If you do use safety bars, they should be 1 inch below your bottom squat position. You can go ahead and find that by getting in your bottom squat position with an empty barbell first, and then move your safety pins wherever you need to from there. So let's move on to your stance. There is a wide range here, and it's going to depend on your hip and ankle mobility as well as your limb and torso lengths. There is a point in both directions, narrow and wide, that you lose your mechanical advantage, however, meaning that if you go too narrow with your stance or too wide, it is unfavorable for force transfer and the anatomical function of doing an actual squat. For most people, the best stance is going to be from right under the shoulders or just outside the shoulders or your hips. The more narrow your stance is, the more ankle dorsiflexion and mobility may be required depending on your limb lengths. Someone with really long femurs is going to have to drive the knees further over the toes or drive the knees outward and use a slightly wider stance in order to keep the bar over the center of the foot, which is our goal. The point is, play with your stance and know that this may change over time as well. A wider stance may recruit more adductor, which is your inner thighs, and a narrower stance may recruit more glute. If hypertrophy is your goal, that's something to consider, but please don't get lost in the weeds here. Find the stance that feels most powerful and stable for you. Your feet can point straight forward or turn out. Again, this is going to be based on your own restrictions and your comfort. So that covers your lower body setup. Now we're going to move on to what is happening in the upper body with your squat. A mentor in college always said to me, bench with your feet and squat with your hands, and I absolutely love that. We tend to think of the squat as a lower body exercise and the bench as an upper body exercise, and this is true, but both of these exercises benefit from, and I think demand, an active full body. For the squat, that means gripping the bar and pulling yourself into it. Yes, I want you to think about making a big back with your traps for the bar to sit on and engaging your lats to pull your elbows underneath the bar. People have a differing view on this, and that's okay. I'm personally not a fan of letting the elbows flare out and back. We want to travel straight up and down in a squat. To me, pulling those elbows underneath the bar and driving up as you ascend allows that to happen. The caveat here is high bar versus low bar positioning. The elbows under the bar really only works for high bar. It doesn't make that much sense for low bar. For your grip width, get those hands in nice and close if you can. You may be limited by mobility through the pecs here, so through your front side. Go wider if needed, that's totally fine. I am demonstrating a high bar squat. I cannot get into a low bar position due to lack of mobility. It is very uncomfortable for me, but it can be great for some people. The bar would just sit across your mid trap, so your upper back, and the hips sit back more as the chest drops down. It's slightly more of a hingy squat pattern than a high bar squat. Some people feel really powerful and can produce more force from this position. It's not me. That covers your upper body. Now let's get into some breathing and bracing and how you do that within a back squat. The goal of breathing in any large compound movement is to create that intra-abdominal pressure. This largely protects the spine and also creates rigidity that helps transfer force from the ground through your lower body, your core, and your upper body. This is especially true with the back squat, which, as I mentioned earlier, is axially loaded. We have that bar on our back loading the spine. So do you need to breathe and brace at full intensity for every lift? No, you do not. The intensity of your breathing and bracing should match the intensity of the lift that you are doing. So if you're working at a lower load, then you can likely breathe through the movement. So inhaling as you lower and exhaling as you stand up, or again, where you exert the most effort, we want to be breathing out and or holding that breath. So let's assume that you do need to breathe and brace for your back squat. You can breathe before stepping under the bar and then take another small breath after you're under the bar, or if you're comfortable, you can step under the bar, breathe and brace, and then lower all in one. I am going to demo stepping under the bar and then breathing, which is my personal preference. At the top in a neutral standing position, you are going to breathe in, down, back, and into the sides like a balloon, then briefly breathe out and draw up the pelvic floor and compress your core and oblique muscles. Contracting the core once you breathe in locks in that air, creating the intra-abdominal pressure that we are after. Once you do that, you're set, so you can stand up to unrack the bar and then take a step or two backwards. You're gonna set your feet ready to squat and then take a quick small breath before lowering again. That's not required, but a lot of people do, and it seems to be most comfortable for most people. As far as maintaining that intra-abdominal pressure, you're going to take a small sip at the top of each rep, and that again is just to maintain that abdominal pressure so we're not losing it as you are going through rep after rep of however many you have to do. For your bar path, in a back squat, we're really looking at a vertical bar path. It starts and ends over the midfoot. There may be some variance, but we don't want to have big shifts onto the toes or heels. Keep that whole foot on the floor. A great drill for this, a little bonus, if you squat barefoot, is to put a band underneath both of your big toes. It needs to have tension in it. And then as you squat down and up, we want to not lose that tension in the band. If you lose that tension, obviously we are not keeping our whole foot and our big toe on the floor particularly. You can also video yourself from the side to see your bar path. And if you need help with that, go ahead and check out my big lift audit. It teaches you how to video and analyze your lifts, and then you can change what you need to for your movement from there. That is your setup of the squat. So now let's move into the actual movement portion. Your eccentric or lowering portion of the squat, it's common to say sit back, but it's really more accurate to say sit down. I encourage my clients to sit between their ankles. This typically keeps the bar over their midfoot and allows them to keep their chest upright, as much makes sense for their setup and their anatomy. The goal for the bottom of the squat is to get the top of the thigh below the knee. If you can't, we are going to go over what to do later in this video. Always control the eccentric so we are not dropping it like it's hot and bouncing out of that bottom position. For the standing up or the concentric portion, think about using your quads to press the floor away and using your hands to help press into the bar as you raise. Some people really resonate with the cue of spreading the floor as you stand up. This cue never really clicked for me, but it can really help engage the glutes as you come into hip extension. So give it a go if it makes sense for you. As far as re-racking, you're going to step straight forward, hit the rack, and then drop. Your feet should be side by side, so we're not stepping with one foot forward and then trying to rack it. You're not looking side to side. If your if your J hooks are set where they should be, you should be able to literally just push the bar forward and drop it down. We should not be worried about hitting the J hooks if they are appropriately set. Now let's look at how to fail the back squat. Your safety bars. You should be able to just drop the weight and simply squat underneath and then remove yourself from the situation. Like I said, they should be set 1 inch below your bottom position. So if you do happen to get pinned and bottom out in a squat, you're really just dropping 1 inch, and then you can step out of the bar. If you are not using safety bars, you always want to push the weight off of your back and then step forward. Ideally, you never fail via crumbling the spine and the bar traveling over your neck, which I will not be demonstrating for you. For limitations and modifications of the back squat, what if you can't reach parallel in your squat? The simple thing to do here is elevate your heels on plates or use wedges. You can also use squatting shoes. This is not cheating, not really anyway. Are you competing? Are you operating under some written law about squatting? No. If you lack the mobility to reach parallel, see if elevating the heels can help. You can also do this if you'd just like a more quad dominant squat. When we elevate the heels, it allows the knees to travel over the toes more, which is going to give us a better quad stretch and therefore recruit more muscle fibers of the quads. If you have knee valgus or knees caving in, or even just one knee caving in, you can put a band around the knees, and that is going to hopefully trigger your glutes to engage and keep the knees not beyond the toes, but just where they should be in the squat. When you're doing this, you want to use a slow tempo and weight in which you would not cave in at. So if you find that you only start to cave at heavier weights, then choose a load that you can maintain the proper form with and build load from there. And if you have a butt wink, then please see both of my videos on what a butt wink is and how to fix it. I tried to cover as much as made sense in this video for the back squat. I love the back squat, and while not everyone needs to do this exercise, if you're here, I hope that it helped. If you have other questions or video requests, please drop them down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you.